Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. Today our topic is the forgotten war, the neglect of the crisis that is ongoing in Ambazonia. Today we're going to be talking how La Republic government, the Cameroon government, has been making sure that the international community does not discuss about the conflict, and that has made it in such a way that there's a lot of neglect of the war. Imagine America granting TPS, temporary protected status, to the people of Ambazonia, the same time with Ukraine, but the attention is more focused on those other conflicts around the world, not the one in Ambazonia. I'll give some points today for us to understand why that is the issue, okay, so that we can understand what's going on. Okay, we've seen a lot of politics at the United Nations. We've seen all those politics in different, La Republic's job is to not to help in the smooth transition and discussion on their job is to go and block international organization, go and block any entity that want to discuss the conflict. When Switzerland came, La République du Cameroon started the discussion for negotiation and later abandoned it. When Canada came, the Canadian government started the negotiation, and the Cameroon government was also part of the discussion, but later they back out. All these were efforts that the Cameroon government was just testing the waters, okay, to test the seriousness of the international community. But when you look at the trajectory of the crisis, you will see that for the past 8 years today, there is no end in sight. The war is still ongoing. The same casualties on both sides. We see the military being killed, the Cameroon military being killed. We see the Ambazonian fighters keep fighting resiliently. That is what we see. But the international community is, because of all this media blockage, all these things that the Republic is doing to hide from their crimes that they commit in Ambazonia. Remember, February, this same month, is a month of the remembrance of the Ngabu massacre, where more than almost 21 civilians were killed. That's just for one day. The Ngabu massacre comes to our mind. But this is what happened this same February, some years back, okay? And you see that the Cameroon military, the government refused, that they did not do it. But later, they come and say, we are sorry. My children did this job. Okay, that's how it is. If you're not part of the entity, it's very, very difficult for you to understand what's going on. The Cameroon government's job is to block international community from discussing the conflict. Okay, they don't want the international community to come and discuss the conflict. The war has taken a toll on the people of Ambazonia, and has also taken a toll on the people of La Republique. Okay, the Cameroon government spent a lot of money to keep their military in our territory. Why? Their people don't have roads, their people don't have infrastructure, there's poverty killing them, That is not the kind of system we want. Our people should understand that La Republique's job is to divide and rule us. Divide and rule. It's the same system that France France was using on all her colonies. The divide and rule tactic. Okay, when they see a very good government, they will go and pick somebody, convince that person, give the person money, bam. All you know, they are separated, you know. So anyway, we should not copy from others, but we have a lot of things going on that we have to discuss today. Okay, number one, why is the war forgotten? Why do you think the war has been forgotten? Okay, look at the way these massacres happen. Not only in Gabon, the human rights abuses, that the targeting of civilians and children, the humanitarian crisis, all these things that I think they are discussed. Okay, failure to address the root causes of the conflict, failure. All these are things that we see get that. Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna play this excerpt so that you can get some glimpse of let me play this excerpt. You get some glimpse of how certain
The Ambazonian crisis, a conflict often unheard of in international circles, is a stark reminder of the enduring wounds of colonialism. Nestled in the heart of Africa, Cameroon bears the scars of a fractured past, a legacy inherited from both British and French colonial rule. This division, etched into the very fabric of the nation, planted the seeds of discord that would later blossom into outright conflict. The year 1961 marked a pivotal moment for the southern Cameroons, an area with a distinct Anglophone heritage. It was a time of hope, of choosing their own destiny. The choice was presented. Unification with Cameroon, a nation predominantly francophone, or union with Nigeria. The allure of unity proved strong, and the southern Cameroons opted to join Cameroon, a decision fueled by promises of a federal system that would respect and preserve their cultural and linguistic identity. These promises, however, would soon ring hollow. Instead of the promised autonomy, the Anglophone regions found themselves increasingly marginalized. Their legal system, education and culture, all rooted in English tradition, faced relentless pressure to conform to the Francophone majority. Years turned into decades, and the resentment simmered, fueled by a growing sense of injustice. The Anglophone population watched as their institutions were gradually eroded, replaced by systems that felt a structure that would guarantee the protection of their language, culture and autonomy. Their pleas, however, were met with a heavy hand. The government's response was swift and brutal, a clear indication that they perceived these calls for equality as a threat to their authority. Peaceful demonstrations were met with military force. The very people entrusted with educating and upholding the law were targeted, arrested, and subjected to violence. This heavy-handed approach, instead of quelling the unrest, only served to further inflame it. A climate of fear and resentment descended upon the Anglophone regions as the government's crackdown intensified. What began as peaceful protests quickly escalated into armed resistance. Faced with the government's intransigence and brutality, Some within the Anglophone movement saw no other option but to take up arms. The year 2017 witnessed the formation of armed separatist groups determined to fight for the independence of a new nation they called Ambazonia. This marked a tragic turning point, as a struggle for basic rights and recognition morphed into a bloody conflict, tearing the nation apart at its seams. The international community, however, remained largely silent. Cameroon, strategically insignificant on the global stage, did not command the attention of major powers. The conflict was relegated to the back pages of newspapers, a distant crisis unfolding in a forgotten corner of the world. This lack of international attention, this deafening silence, allowed the conflict to fester and grow, with devastating consequences for the civilian population caught in the crossfire. The human cost of the Ambazonian crisis is staggering, a testament to the devastating consequences of unchecked conflict. Years of fighting have left an indelible mark on the region, characterized by widespread displacement, extrajudicial killings, and a systematic disregard for human rights. The United Nations.
Yeah, so that was just an excerpt of the conflict, why it was neglected, and how the failure to address the root causes of the conflict by the Cameroon government. You remember the Cameroon government organized the what they call the Grand National Dialogue in Yaoundé when the crisis started, and they brought in the CPGM elites, to come and discuss about what doesn't concern them. When you have a problem, and you know that this problem is between these people and one person or the other, you have to bring that person to the table to talk to that person. You can organize something about that person, then the person doesn't know. Okay, that's how La Republic thought that they can go against the normal trend of doing things. Okay, they spend time jailing our people, putting our people in jail just to suppress them. Okay, just to suppress them. I want to bring to your attention one of our brother from Southern Cameroon who went to Cameroon, and he is a American citizen. Okay, he's an American citizen. He went to Cameroon for a visit, but on his way he was not found. Okay, he wasn't found. So it is very important for you to understand that La Republic is doing everything to silence our people, to imprison our people, to make our people suffer intentionally, so that they should say, "Well, we are tired. We are tired." You have seen instances of certain villages who are trying to do their own things, but the fight for freedom is not easy. It's not smooth. Okay, many people will go through different torments, torture, mistreatment. A lot of things will happen. So if you think that it's a walk in the park, it's not a walk in the park. It's not easy. See Somaliland. I like to take Somaliland example because they endured for many years. No country recognized Somaliland from 1991 when they started their war. No country recognized it.
Estimates that over 6,000 people have lost their lives in the crossfire, a grim statistic that only tells a fraction of the story. Behind these numbers lie countless shattered lives, families torn apart, and a generation scarred by violence. More than 500,000 people have been internally displaced, forced to flee their homes in search of safety. These internally displaced persons, often lacking access to basic necessities like food, water and shelter, face a daily struggle for survival. The conflict has created a humanitarian crisis of immense proportions, with women and children bearing the brunt of the suffering. Schools and hospitals, once symbols of hope and progress, have become targets in this brutal conflict. Attacks on educational institutions have become terrifyingly common, depriving children of their right to education and further deepening the cycle of violence. Healthcare workers operate in a climate of fear, caught between warring factions and unable to provide essential medical aid to those in desperate need. The government's blockade of humanitarian aid has exacerbated an already dire situation. Organizations like Doctors Without Borders have been prevented from reaching those most in need, their life-saving efforts hampered by bureaucratic hurdles and outright hostility. This deliberate obstruction of humanitarian assistance has had a devastating impact on the civilian population, depriving them of essential aid and pushing them further into desperation. Section 4. The World's Silent Consent. Unmasking the Reasons for Neglect. The Ambazonian crisis, despite its devastating human toll, has been met with a deafening silence from the international community. This lack of attention, this absence of meaningful intervention, is a tragic indictment of a global system that often prioritizes geopolitical interests over human lives. Several factors contribute to this neglect, each highlighting the complex interplay of politics, media representation, and international apathy. One of the primary reasons for this indifference lies in the absence of strategic interests in the region. Unlike conflicts in resource-rich or geopolitically significant areas, the Ambazonian crisis has failed to attract the attention of powerful nations. Cameroon, lacking the oil wealth of some of its neighbors or the strategic importance of other African nations, has become a forgotten crisis, a conflict deemed unworthy of international attention or intervention. The media, too, bears some responsibility for this lack of awareness. The Ambazonian crisis, often relegated to the back pages of newspapers or absent from major news networks, has struggled to break through the noise of other global events. This lack of media attention, this failure to adequately cover the conflict's complexities and human cost, has contributed to a general sense of apathy among the international public. The Cameroonian government, for its part, has actively worked to suppress information about the conflict, seeking to control the narrative and downplay the scale of the crisis. Journalists and human rights activists face intimidation, harassment, and even imprisonment for daring to speak out against the government's actions. This deliberate suppression of information has created a chilling effect, making it even more difficult for the international community to get an accurate picture of the situation on the ground. Section 5. Echoes of Ngabu. When atrocity becomes routine. The Ambazonian crisis is characterized not only by neglect, but also by a horrifying normalization of violence. Atrocities, once considered shocking aberrations, have become tragically commonplace, a testament to the brutal reality of this forgotten conflict. The Ngabu massacre, a horrifying event that unfolded in February 2020, stands as a chilling example of this descent into barbarity. In the early hours of that fateful day, Cameroonian security forces, accompanied by armed militia groups, descended upon the village of Ngabu. What followed was a massacre, a horrific display of violence that left an indelible scar on the collective memory of the Anglophone regions. At least 21 civilians, including women and children, were brutally murdered. Some were shot at close range, while others were burned alive in their homes. The government's initial response was to deny any involvement, blaming the killings on separatist fighters. However, mounting evidence from human rights organizations and eyewitness accounts painted a different picture. The evidence pointed to a deliberate and systematic attack on civilians, a war crime perpetrated by those entrusted with protecting them. The Ngabu massacre, far from being an isolated incident, is indicative of a broader pattern of human rights abuses perpetrated by both sides of the conflict. Extrajudicial killings, enforced disappearances, and torture have become terrifyingly common, casting a long shadow over the region. Schools and hospitals, once considered safe havens, have been attacked with impunity. The conflict has created a climate of fear and impunity, where perpetrators of violence operate with little fear of accountability. This culture of impunity, this normalization of atrocity, is a stain on the conscience of the international community, a stark reminder of the human cost of indifference. Section 6. Breaking the cycle of inattention, a call for global action. The Ambazonian crisis, though largely absent from international headlines, is a stark reminder of the human cost of indifference. The ongoing conflict, fueled by historical grievances and exacerbated by the global community's apathy, demands immediate attention and action. Breaking this cycle of inattention requires a multi-pronged approach, one that addresses the root causes of the conflict while providing much-needed humanitarian assistance to those caught in the crossfire. The international community must move beyond its silence and actively engage in finding a peaceful resolution to the conflict. This requires leveraging diplomatic channels to bring both the Cameroonian government and separatist leaders to the negotiating table. A lasting peace, however, cannot be achieved through military means alone. It demands addressing the legitimate grievances of the Anglophone population, ensuring their cultural and linguistic rights are respected and protected. Accountability for the atrocities committed during the conflict is not only essential for achieving justice, but also for preventing future abuses. The perpetrators of the Ngabu massacre and other crimes against humanity must be brought to justice. This requires independent investigations and, if necessary, the involvement of the International Criminal Court. Holding those responsible for these heinous acts accountable sends a clear message that impunity will not be tolerated.
In politics,
the dignities of Southern Cameroon, where are we? CDC shall not be sold. CDC shall not be sold after destroying, selling, or closing down or removing the Yoke Power Station, the West Cameroon Development Agency, the West Cameroon Produce Marketing Board, the Santa Coffee Estate, Cameroon Bank, Radio Buya FM transmitters, Zion Choir Omkum simply say. Zion Choir Omkum simply say, as teach in time, save 9. The Cameroon Anglophone movement, where are we? The Southwest Elite Association, where are we? The dignitaries of Southern Cameroon, John Go Foncha, Eti Eno, Estimona, Njo Litumbe. We thought that you were preparing this Southern Cameroon for her youth. It is regrettable to note that Southern Cameroon have been sold. The map of Southern Cameroon have been sold. Southern Cameroon have been sold. The map of Southern Cameroon have been sold. We all have physical features. We, the lay people, see these moves as a calculated attempt to suck a milking cow to death. Southern Cameroon have been sold. The map of Southern Cameroon have been sold. The Southern Cameroonian kindly listen. From Kambe to Victoria, from Munemba to Menyeng, Southern Cameroon is our land. Wurajin. Southern Cameroon is our land. We all have the right to fight for it. We all have the right to fight for it, even to the last soul. Norum Insa. Kirumen Inkar, God of Manfako, CDC shall not be sold. CDC shall not be sold. The last symbol of Southern Cameroon to be destroyed. CDC shall, I am correct. CDC shall not.
we begin with issues concerning the Ngarbu massacre, and 5 years after that incident in which soldiers killed at least 20 persons in Ngarbu in the Dongamantum division, northwest region of Cameroon, justice is yet to be served in the matter pending at the Yaoundé military court. And we now have updates with Innocent Aze, who spoke to the lead defense counsel of the victims, Barrister Tamfo Richard. Greater details in this report.
February 14, 2025 marks exactly 5 years that 21 civilians, including 13 children, were massacred in Ngarbu in the northwest region of Cameroon by state forces, assisted by some armed Fulani militias. This was confirmed by an inquiry commission that was created to delve deep into the massacre. 21 people accused of involvement in the killing were dragged to court. Cameroonians, especially relatives of the victims, expressed a sigh of relief. Justice they clamored for will be served the deceased loved ones. Unfortunately, the slow pace of the trial for justice to take its course raised concerns about the justice system's efficiency and ability to render justice to the victims.
Because nothing will explain that a case which we thought was actually going to be very speedy had to drag for so long, and 5 years to me is really too long, and that's made us get tired because I, the lawyer, was forced to abandon because nobody was taking care of my financial expenditures.
5 years on, even lawyers on the case are already giving up, understanding the slow pace of the justice system implies justice denied the Ngarbu massacred civilians.
I will be honest to you to tell you that for the past 1 or 2 years I've just been following up the case from afar, because each time you go to court is an adjournment to another. From the very start of that case, I will not lie to you, I've spent from my own pockets hundreds of thousands, because at one point in time I had to pay money for the so-called victims to come to court to testify, and for each of the sessions I will not spend less than 150,000. So I could not bear this cost for the number of years.
The lack of progress for 5 years is said to be compounded by the limited opportunity for access and participation by victims' families, the lack of probative witnesses, and the fact that senior officers with command responsibility have not been arrested or charged, with the lawyers of the victims surrendering from the case due to the financial burden weighing on them. It is feared the trial will terminate and justice buried.